With the help of Hashem, we are learning Beitzah Daf Tezvav. We left off on Daf Tezvav, Amid Aleph, 7 lines from the top of the Amid. The Gemara is referring back to the Mishnah regarding what may be gifted to one's fellow on Yom Tov and what may be not. The Mishnah said that a sandal hamasumar, that a sandal with spikes may not be given as a gift on Yom Tov. And we're going to review, when we learn the Gemara, the story that we had in the Masechta Shabbos Daf Samach, a very tragic event that happened while people were wearing these spike sandals. Many Yidden got killed. And because of that, because of a one-time event from our generation, we can say now similar to what happened in Meiron, terrible tragedy, people were crushed to death. Chazal made a takana to remember what happened and therefore to learn the lessons from what happened, that a sandal, mesumar, that this type of spike sandal may not be worn on Shabbos and on Yom Tov. They didn't say it may never be worn. We'll speak about this soon when we learn the Gemara. But being that this type of shoe, this type of sandal that had spikes may not be worn on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, that's why it may not be gifted to one's fellow on Yom Tov as well. And the Gemara actually is going to really clarify and make a much broader, a much more liberal application of the rule that we had at the bottom of the Mishnah, Daf Yudalid, that the Mishnah says that Kol Shenei Oison Boy B'Yom Tov, the way we attached it is that any item that the recipient may have hana'ah from on Yom Tov is something that is allowed to be gifted on Yom Tov. We're gonna apply this much broader. We're gonna say that even if there is an item that the recipient may not use on Yom Tov, being that it is a finished product, and therefore the recipient has hana'ah, has benefit, is happy that he received or she received the gift, it also may be gifted on Yom Tov. The sandal hamasumad will be an exception, but a lot more about a broader application of this rule as we learn the Gemara. And we're going to learn a little bit about wearing tefillin on Yom Tov, regarding gifting a pair of tefillin on Yom Tov. On Daf Tezvav Amid Beis, we're going to start the second chapter. And right now, we're going to share a very important introduction. It's really a Gemara that we learned in the Sechtas Psachim on Daf Memvav Amid Beis regarding Eruv Tafshilin. Now, the word Eruv means to combine, to merge. The way we merge, Tafshilin means through a cooked item. We merge through cooking. What are we referring to? One may not, in some circumstances, cook food on Yom Tov for Shabbos. We're speaking here about a scenario where Yom Tov is on Friday, or Yom Tov now is Thursday and Friday, but we're focusing on the Friday. So Erev Shabbos is Yom Tov. In the scenarios where one is not allowed to prepare on Friday, on Yom Tov for Shabbos, then making the Eruv Tafshilin will be of no avail. But we will discover, let's learn this right now. Rabbah and Abchizda. If you remember in the beginning of Beitzah, on Daf Beis Amid Beis, we learned the principle that we call Hachana de Rabbah. Rabbah is the one that says that something may not biblically be prepared on Yom Tov for Shabbos. You want to eat something on Shabbos, it needed to be prepared on a weekday prior to Shabbos. So Rabbah, therefore, says, number one, we will create a scenario where preparing food on Friday for Shabbos, Yom Tov Friday for Shabbos, will not be a biblical prohibition. And that will be when you are preparing food for Friday, not the last moment, not right before Shkia, but enough time prior on Friday that if guests were to come to your house and you would want to give them a lot of food on Friday, not one guest, many guests, then the food that you prepare on Friday potentially, theoretically, might be used on Friday. This is called hoyil, since, says Rabbah, hoyil v'i mikloya archim. If guests will come on Friday, they will have it on Friday. Therefore, making food that time earlier on Friday is permitted biblically, but prohibited rabbinically. We'll explain why it will be prohibited rabbinically. So now, to circumvent a only rabbinic prohibition, if you begin to make food for Shabbos on the weekday, on the day Erev Yom Tov. So if there's one day Yom Tov, you have to begin cooking food for Shabbos on Thursday. If it's in Chutz La'aretz, it's a 2 days Yom Tov. And therefore, let's say Yom Tov is Thursday and Friday, you have to begin cooking some food on Wednesday. So since you began to prepare food Erev Yom Tov for Shabbos, now you can continue the food preparation for Shabbos on Friday, but only Friday early in the day. Early in the day doesn't mean the AM hours. Early in the day means that when you finish preparing the food on Friday Yom Tov for Shabbos, if guests will come after you finish preparing the food, they would be able to eat it all up prior to Shabbos, still on Yom Tov. All of that is the step that's needed to make the preparation from Yom Tov to Shabbos only rabbinically prohibited. Since you also began to cook food before Yom Tov, now it's completely permitted. Now, Rav Chizda does not subscribe to Hachana de Rabba. Rav Chizda actually holds that on a biblical level, Tzarechei Shabbos Nasim b'Yom Tov, which is great, which means that Midoraisa, you are allowed to prepare food Friday, Yom Tov for Shabbos, but it's rabbinically prohibited. We're going to learn today again, why is it rabbinically prohibited? But since the prohibition is only of a rabbinic nature, so to circumvent that prohibition, again, the same concept, Eruve Tafshilin Bima Arev, right? You don't begin making food on Yom Tov for Shabbos. You begin cooking food Erev Yom Tov. And now we consider that which we are doing on Yom Tov only a continuation of that which you began prior to Yom Tov. Oh, prior to Yom Tov, of course, you can prepare food a weekday for Shabbos. Thus, again, you will be allowed to make food for Shabbos. According to Rab Chizda, you can start preparing on Yom Tov for Shabbos all the way late in the afternoon. According to Rab Chizda, you don't need to have the hoyel, the imekloya orchim chazilei. Now, we're going to learn very importantly today on Amud Beis, is the Eruv Tafshilin for the kavod of Shabbos, or is it primarily for the kavod of Yom Tov? And we'll explain that while we learn the Gemara. We're going to have the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer holds that eating, which is one of the ways that one can experience joy on Yom Tov, is only optional, is reshus. If someone wants, they can choose to fulfill the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov by learning Torah. You can fulfill the mitzvah of Simcha by doing ruchniistic things. And Rabbi Yeshua holds that chalkeu, that some of Yom Tov taka should be used for a ruchniistic celebration, but he holds that the meals on Yom Tov are obligatory. It's not reshus, because chatzi lashem v'chatzi lochemen, like half and half doesn't mean 50%, but some of the day should be used, so to say, for a spiritual connection to God, and another part of the day should be used for a physical elevation, the elevation of the physical in celebration of God. And we're going to, from that, to the extent that we could, we're going to go into the very important Daf Tezayin, but already on Tezvav Amud Beis, we have the concept that Amar Lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael Levu Elai, that if a person doesn't have money to buy food for Shabbos or Yom Tov, God tells them, borrow money. And Vekachu Kedushas Hayoim, speaking about celebrating Shabbos and Yom Tov Begashmias, by having food, etc. And Vaha'aminu Bi, God says, believe in me, trust in me, Va'ani Pareya, I will pay you back. And that will lead us into this whole topic, which is so much connected to the time of the year, that even though we know that Kol Mizanoisav Shel Adam Ketsuvim Loi Mirosh Hashanah V'Ad Yom Kippur, that all of the income of a person is determined on Rosh Hashanah, and for many people it goes from Rosh Hashanah until Yom Kippur, and nothing more will be able to be earned. But there is an exception to that, and that is that all of the expenditures that people spend for Shabbos, for Yom Tov, and for tuition for one's children, they are not part of that Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur predetermination. And if a person will undertake during the year to spend more money for Shabbos and Yom Tov, more money for tuition, then God will make sure that this person will earn all of that additional expenditures. It's going to be a beautiful daf also going into Daf Tezayim. But first, let's finish Perek Rishon. So let's come back over here to Daf Tezvav. And we are up to, again, 7 lines from the top of the Amid. One of the items that may not be gifted on Yom Tov is the sandal hamesumar. Now, let me now go into more details, as Rashi reminds us from Masechtas Shabbos, Daf Samach. during the time of Roman persecution. Here we have a good picture of the sandal hamasumah. It was very common for people to wear these types of sandals, especially if they were out there in the field or in a rocky terrain or in a mountainous terrain. And we, to keep Shabbos, we needed to do this in hiding. And there was a tremendous cave system, tunnel system that we made, and that extended all the way into the times of the revolt of Bar Kokhba. Unbelievable how many Yidden were found their freedom to practice religion pushed underground. And there were watchmen making sure that the Romans don't come. And there was a time that the Romans, there was a sound by the entrance of the cave, and thousands of Jews that were congregated in this cave system they thought that the Romans are coming to get them. And they had an escape route, but it bottlenecked. In other words, the area through which they wanted to leave, too many people got there at the same time. A few people fell. People were trying to run out. They were afraid of the Romans. And because of this spiked sandal, when they stepped on top of each other, a tremendous amount of Yidden got killed. It was a one-time event. But to remember that one-time event, it's not that Chazal said you may not wear these spiked sandals. They said that on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, you're not allowed to wear these spiked sandals. During the weekdays, you could wear them. And this will be a zecher of, I would say the modern words, of the importance of crowd control. And this is also a reminder how fear sometimes is more dangerous than the thing that you are afraid of, because the Romans Bechal were not there. And even if, God forbid, the Romans would have been there, so many Yidden got killed because of the fear that we had from the Romans. So to remember that they made a takana that on Shabbos and on Yom Tov you can't wear these types of sandals, and therefore our Mishnah says that you may not send it. Sandal hamasumah my tamaloi, says the Gemara mishum ma'isha shahayo. Now something is very interesting. You would think that since you may not wear it, it should become muksa. If it would be muksa, then the Mishnah shouldn't have only said you may not send it. Not sending it implies in your house you can move them around. It's only you can't send it as a gift. Exactly. Because you know how you remember the story? Again, if the message is crowd control, precautions, if the message is beware of fear, don't be afraid. Fear is worse than anything else. The way you remember it is dafka by being allowed to move the sandal hamasumah. If it's completely muktzah, you're going to put it in a closet and you won't see it and you won't think about it, out of sight, out of mind. So Amar Abaya, sandal hamasumah is only asr l'naloi. The isr is only to wear it, and this is an exception. Normally, something that can't be worn, that can't be used, is by default muktzah. Here, they don't want it to be muktzah. Umulta l'taltaloi, asr l'naloi. You can't wear it. Because since it says in our Mishnah, you may not send it, if you can't even move it, which normally, that will be the rule. It's a keli, it's made for something that you don't use for Shabbos, it should be muktzah. If you can't even move it, there's no need for the Mishnah to say you can't send it. And the reason why it's not muktzah, I think, is because they want for you, dafka, to move it. They don't want to take it out of your world. They want to leave it in your world. And then they tell you, don't wear it. Don't send it as a gift, as a zecher, as a reminder. Okay. Remember, Danny, if you remember when we learned Shabbos, Danny was asking, because of one event, they made an isur. Now, first of all, it's not the only time, but it's a good kasha. Remember when Miron happened, someone mentioned this amongst our chevra. Yeah, because we have to remember these events, because that's the only way we prevent them in the future. Okay.
Well, was the tragedy directly related to the sandal?
Yeah, if they would not, there it's Samach, the amount of Jews that got killed. I'm not minimizing. I know that, what happened in Iran, no one was wearing these sandals. But because of these sandals, it was a terrible tragedy. Mestama, hundreds of Yidden got killed there. Tremendous number of Jews got killed, and they were killed because they were stabbed, they were poked to death. Okay. Also, you may not send a unsewn shoe. So the Gemara says, pshita, an unsewn shoe is not a keli. Look, it's not pshita. Nitzrach needed even though it's partially attached with small wooden pegs. It's semi-usable. It's not finished. Don't send it. It's a non-finished product. You may not even send white shoes. Again, no one wore white shoes. People only wore black shoes. No one golfed them. And to blacken shoes, you have to have a uman that knows how to professionally paint it or dye it. That's an activity that may not be done on Shabbos nor on Yom Tov, so it's an unfinished product. Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda matir b'shachar, and only v'oiser b'lavan, as we have in our Mishnah, mipnei shetzarich Beitzah sagid, because it needs to have that type of earth, that dark, that blackened earth that they would use to blacken their shoes. How smart is that? Machayim. They would use, but a professional knew how to do it. And Rabbi Yossi oiser b'shachar. Rabbi Yossi says that even a black shoe, if it's not yet completely finished, it's only partially finished, it's only dyed, but it's not smooth. Also, you may not send it because it still needs to have smoothing. And the Gemara just wants to clarify that Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda are not arguing. Marki Asrei. Everyone is speaking about the way shoes was made in their location. But Asrei the Mar in the location of this master. This refers to Rabbi Yehuda. Since Bisra Latachas, the side of the hide, which now is worked into leather shoes, the flesh side of the hide is facing inside the shoe. The flesh side of the hide that's touching the flesh, is the side that needs to have a final smoothing. And without it, it's not finished and people would not wear it. The other side of the hide, the one from which the hair grows, at this point, once it's blackened, it's ready to be worn. So in the place of Rabbi Yehuda, the flesh side of the hide is facing inside the shoe. That's why Rabbi Yehuda holds that if it's black, since it doesn't need smoothing, you can wear it. But Asrei Damar, in the location of Rabbi Yossi, since Bisra La'el, the location that was facing the flesh is the outside, is the one that's facing outside. The part of the hide that hair grows out from is what's inside, and the part that's facing the flesh is that which needs smoothing. So even if it was dyed, even if it was colored and it's black, if it wasn't yet smooth, the nakuda is it's a non-finished product that may not be sent on Yom Tov. And Zehaklal, indeed, the Mishnah says, Kol Shana Yosim B'Bayim, then Yom Tov, that's the way we read it. We put a comma after the word Yom Tov. Any item that you may have hana on Yom Tov, comma mishalchin oisay. And now we're going to say, no, that's a too conservative interpretation. We're going to broaden it. It's more than what you think. Let's begin with the story. Rab Sheshes said to the yeshiva, to the chevra, if you want, you are allowed to send tefillin to your fellow on Yom Tov as a gift. Amalei Abaye, whoa, how can that be? Didn't we learn in our Mishnah the way we interpret it? We put a comma after the words b'Yom Tov. Kol sheni oisem b'Yom Tov, comma mishalchan oisei. No, kol sheni oisem b'Yom Tov mishalchan oisei. And tefillin are not worn on Yom Tov. And l'choyde, if you don't have hana'ah on Yom Tov, if you don't use it on Yom Tov, then you may not send it. Now I want you to know that it is over here. It's late, but this is the Beitzah Daf Tezvav, where there's a big discussion amongst the Rishonim as to tefillin on Yom Tov. And yes, like Rashi quotes from Eruvin, the concept that we should always have two witnesses testifying that we are God's people. One is our bris milah, it's called an ois. Tefillin is called an ois. Since Shabbos and Yom Tov is also called a sign and ois, so I have my bris milah and I have Shabbos and Yom Tov, so I don't need the tefillin. Question is, are you allowed to wear the tefillin? That's a big debate over here. L'kula alma, you don't do it. You're not mechuyev to wear the tefillin. So how are you allowed to send it? So the Gemara says, put the comma before the word b'Yom Tov. Listen, kol sheni oisin boy comma. If you have hana'ah from it, then b'Yom Tov mishalchan oisay. Hana'ah doesn't mean to use it. If I receive something on Yom Tov that is ready to be used, even though I'm not going to actually use it today, that's also called hana'ah on Yom Tov. Or there has to be a hana'ah related, a hana'ah on Yom Tov, but we all know that experience. You get a gift, you're happy. But if the gift that you got is not a finished product, even though, okay, you can still argue you have some hana'ah, that's not enough to justify the gift. Whatever you have hana'ah, even if it's only in the weekday, but it's already finished enough for you to be able immediately to have it on the weekday, then mishalchan oisei b'Yom Tov. Beautiful. And now Amar Abaye tefillin hoil va'asali yadan once you mentioned tefillin, name a buhum milsa. Let me already share something regarding tefillin. I just heard a good word that was said from the Rebbe's father, that when Chazal tell us in Menachos and in Soita and in other places, right, that the yiru kol ami haaretz kishem Hashem nikra lecha v'yaru mimeka elu tefillin shabaroish. So the word tefillin is tipoil aleim imasa v'fachad. That the pasuk of may it befall on the nations fear and awe and dread from the Jewish people. That's the taich of the word tefillin from tipoil. Nice. Anyways, so I'll tell you then regarding tefillin. A person is traveling, we're speaking about Erev Shabbos, and v'tefillin b'roishoi, and you are wearing your tefillin, and v'shakal avachama mitamo. It's sunset, it's Shabbos. Now, let's go. Step number one, step number two. Step number one is that if you are wearing your tefillin on Shabbos, it's not a tachshit, it's not a malbish, so you're not allowed to transport it, but carrying means holding something in your hand. Wearing your tefillin is called hoitza'a kila'achayad, which means it's not biblically prohibited. This is important. It's only rabbinically prohibited. If something is only prohibited on a rabbinic level, here, in our case, for there not to be a bezoyim of your tefillin, so that's what Rashi says. They opened up and they said, "Maniach yodei aleim," simply cover it. People should not see. Cover it with your hat, with your turban. Wear it, and people should not see that you're wearing tefillin, and you can wear it until when you come home. If it would have been a biblical violation, of course, this would not be a solution. But that's the nakuda. You are carrying it, but kala'achayad downgrades it from an isur d'oraisa to an isur d'rabbanan. You have to do something, cover it. People should not see that you're wearing the tefillin and you're good. Another similar. And it was very common for the houses of study to be out there, out of the city. And in many cases, it was in an unprotected area. So at night, when you would leave the Beis HaMedrash, Ganoven would be able to, they entered there. There was nothing for them to take. But tefillin is something that they might steal. So here also, if you're wearing the tefillin d'roishai, the Kaddish all of Ayoim, and now you have to go back to your home in the city, to also maniach yad aleim, you can keep on wearing them and cover them. Have a kasha and you abaya from the following Beitzah. It says in the Beitzah, if you are traveling and the tefillin b'roisha and you're wearing tefillin, the Kaddish all of Ayoim, and now same thing. You didn't, you're coming to your destination later than you thought. Maniach yodei aleim. True, Chazal allowed you to keep on wearing it because it's called carrying in an unusual way, but only when you enter the city. The moment you reach the first house, where leaving your tefillin there will resolve your fear that it's going to be stolen or it's going to be disrespected. Maybe an animal is going to drag it. Leave it in the first house near the wall. Leave it in the first house in the city. Not take it all the way home the way Abaya says. Similarly, and Abaya says that you can wear it all the way home. Answers the Gemara, yeah, depends. Like Asha, the Beitzah is speaking about a case where the closest house, the first house when you enter the city, is already a protected home. So the whole issue is because of bizoyan, maybe a ganef, maybe a dog will drag it. So therefore you leave it there. It's resolved by leaving it there. And Abaya is the loy mintara, that the first house where your tefillin will remain protected is your house. That's a problem. If Abaya's case is that there's nothing protected until your house, the Abaya is, since you are wearing it anyways, no, leave it on. No, Abaya should have said something even more. What happens if you are traveling and God forbid you see tefillin laying on the floor? Whether you know who the owner is, whether you don't know who the owner is, if it's on a place where it's not protected, did we not learn Chevra Mishnah Neiruvin? Hamoitzi tefillin machnisan zug zug. You put it on. Zug means a pair. A pair means you put on the hand, you put on the head. You put it on, correct, to carry it kila'achayad. But that's a greater chiddush than what Abaya is saying. Abaya is implying, since it's on, you keep it on, but you may not put it on. So you would answer, because Abaye, the Mishnah is speaking about an unprotected area, and Abaye is speaking about a protected area. But now that we had the Stir Abaye in the Beitzah, so we said that Abaye is speaking about the loy mintere. Now we got a problem with the Mishnah in Eruvin, answers the Gemara loy kasha. There's different levels of protection. The Beitzah, which allows you, which only allows you to carry it into the closest house to the outside, the house. The first house in the city is once you enter that house, the mintera machmas ganavi umachmas kalbei. It's both protected from thieves and it's protected from animals. That's why you have to leave it over there. Abaya, like we said, the reason why you may not leave it in the first house entering the city is because even in that house, animals won't enter. It's protected from animals, but that house is not a place where there's a protection from it being stolen, which is why you are allowed to wear it all the way going home. And indeed, Mao, the Tema, you would argue, we're speaking about a Jewish city. If the majority of the inhabitants are Jews, so we can presume that the majority of the thieves proportionally are Jews. And one might have thought that since Roiv Listim Yisraelinu, that in this area, most of the thieves are Jews, therefore we should not be afraid that they will steal it or disrespect it. And if that would be the case, Abaya would say you have to leave it in the Baya Samach L'chaima. So Chomash Molan Abaya, no. That since there is still a possibility that they're going to steal it and they will be disrespectful towards it, you are allowed to wear it all the way to your house only because you are already wearing it. But if you find it on the ground, if even kilovim, animals might get to it, that's the Mishnah Neiruvin. Then you are even allowed to put it on. But if there's no fear that animals are going to drag it and disrespect it, the only fear is ganavim. If you're not even wearing it, then you're not allowed to put it on. Then you have to say, listen, if in this area most people are Jews, most ganavim therefore proportionally are Jews, I'm not allowed to put it on because maybe a yid, a ganiv, God forbid, will disrespect it. That's where we need Abai to say, but if you are already wearing it and it's not protected, if you would leave it here, Ganavim might get to it. Since you're wearing it, you can walk either to the closest protected home or to your house, if that's the first protected place.
Rabbi.
Yes.
In all these places, even if it's talking about a wall, does this mean there's no Eruv, so it's a carrying issue? Is that our main issue here?
It's a carrying issue. And not only is it a carrying issue, but like we just mentioned,
so you want to minimize the amount of carrying. That's the idea.
Minimize it. So no, Danny, it's carrying midrabanan because it's kala achayad, and this is very much connected. There's not enough time just to be aware. Is it that you're not obligated to wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov, or is it that it's usur? That's another issue. In other words, if it's usur to wear it, then take it off as soon as possible, even if there is an Eruv in the city. It's a walled city. Because why are you wearing it for a second longer if you're not allowed to wear tefillin on Shabbos and Yom Tov?
Well, if there's an Eruv, why not just carry it? You don't have to wear it.
Correct. Because then it's probably muktzah. But you're wearing it anyways.
Still muktzah, yeah.
Correct. No, but you're wearing it anyways. Once you're wearing, well, we already have that din. Once you have muktzah on you, there's a big talk about all this, Danny. Good. With this, we'll say Hadran Aloch Beitzah, and we're going to begin now the second chapter. For those who missed the beginning, please, now that this is recorded, it's important before you begin the Chazer Psachim Daf Memvav, just this Machloikes Rabba and Abchiz. It's very important. One thing is clear: if it would be prohibited biblically to cook or bake food on Yom Tov for Shabbos, the Eruv Tavshilin will not work. The Eruv Tavshilin is an instrument that only works in the scenario, which is most scenarios, or maybe in all scenarios according to Rab Chizda, that since the problem of cooking on Friday Yom Tov for Shabbos is only of a rabbinic nature, we'll see why in the Gemara what's the problem, but there's a theoretical problem. So the solution to the rabbinic problem is begin preparing food before Yom Tov. And then everything that you do on Friday for Shabbos is considered mu'urav. It's considered merged with only a continuation of the preparation that you began before Yom Tov. Okay, now let's begin. Yom Tov, says the Mishnah, Shechal Liyaz Be'erev Shabbos. Yom Tov is on Friday. Lo yivashel batchila mi Yom Tov l'Shabbos. One may not cook on Yom Tov for Shabbos. However, avol mevashel hu Yom Tov. This is before an Eruv. A person on Friday, of course, can cook for Friday. Now, what happens if you cooked for Friday Yom Tov to eat on Friday Yom Tov, and there's leftover food? So then, there's no problem for you to use that food for Shabbos. But one thing, my friends, sometimes we permit, sometimes we actually advocate to do what we call a ha'arama, a subterfuge. Here, we're not allowed to do a harama. Eruv Tavshilin is not a harama. One may not say, well, I'm cooking a lot of food for today. No. If you didn't make an Eruv Tavshilin, you can only cook Friday for Friday. However, if there'll be leftover food, then you can use it. Now, says the Mishnah, here we begin Eruv Tavshilin. A person should make, here the Mishnah says, a cooked food from before Yom Tov, whether it's Thursday is out of Yom Tov, or if it's a Wednesday out of Yom Tov. I don't care how far the out of Yom Tov is from the Friday. Doesn't matter. You make food on out of Yom Tov, and now now what you make on Friday is considered only a continuation from that which you began on out of Yom Tov. And yes, you will be allowed to cook food on Friday for Shabbos. According to Rabbah, even with an Eruv Tavshilin, since you need to have the hoyel, you can only cook food on Friday with the Eruv if what you will finish cooking on Friday will be, let's say, around an hour before Shkia. That's what we aim for. So like this, if a group of yeshiva bachrim will attack your house, all the food will be eaten up on Friday before Shkia. Don't forget that after Shkia Friday, you can't eat because you have to wait now until Kiddush. According to Rab Chizda, B'chlal, there's no problem. It's only of a rabbinic nature. You can cook all the way up until Shkia. Now, how much food must you prepare for the Eruv Tavshilin? Achloikes, Beishamai, Beisilo. Beishamai Yoimnim, Shnei Tavshilin must be 2 cooked foods. Beisilo Yoimnim, only Tavshil Echad, only 1 cooked food is enough. Guys, I know many people are thinking, we know that we take a baked item and a cooked item. We'll get there next year. But Beisilo says it's enough 1 cooked dish. Now, Vishavin, even Beishamai will agree to Beisilo that if a person is preparing a fish, which was a commonly made food, Vidag or Beitzah sha'alav, if you broil fish in an egg, I think even I know how to do that. So now it's like 1 food, but it's fish and egg. That's called Shnei Tavshilin. Now, another thing. What happens if you made the Eruv Tavshilin, which means you began to make 1 cooked dishes, 2 cooked dishes. We do a cooked dish and a baked item, challah or matzah. You did all that. But it was eaten or it was lost before, guys, listen to these words. This is important. Before the preparations for Shabbos has been completed, is even if when you began on Friday making food for Shabbos, you still had the Eruv. We need for the Eruv to be intact, or to be enough of it needs to be there until you finish all of the prep. Once you finished all of the prep, I don't care if it got eaten or lost, even though it got eaten or lost not on Friday. But if it got eaten or lost before you completed all the preparations, then you don't have it. Then lo yivashel alav atchila. However, further clarifies the Mishnah, if you made a big Eruv Tavshilin, you don't need all of it. As again, we'll learn in the subsequent shiurim, the amount of food needed is 1 kezayis. So of course, if you only made 1 kezayis, even though we'll see lechatchila, you should make something more chashuv. But if you only made 1 kezayis, if any amount was eaten before you finished preparing, you're not good. But if you put away a nice piece of meat, a nice piece of fish, some chashuv, a cooked dish, that was many kezasim, some of it was eaten, that doesn't matter. Because the imshir mimenu kol shehu does not mean here anything. Kol shehu means a kezayis amount. Then, even though it's not as much as you had Erev Shabbos, you're 100% lechatchila good. Semechalav l'Shabbos. Beautiful. Okay. A little bit of an unusual opening now in the Gemara. The Gemara is asking me Nohana Mili, which means from where do you know that you need to have a Eruv Tavshilin? Chavre, Eruv Tavshilin is almost the the face of rabbinic enactments. For example, when Chazal tell us that Avram Avinu kept the entire Torah, not only all of the Taryag mitzvahs, ultimately even Bris Milah after God commanded him, but Avram Avinu even kept Eruv Tavshilin. It's used as the face of rabbinic laws. Rabbinic laws are not sourced in scripture. That would be a biblical law. However, there's a concept called a asmachta that many times, even though there was something that originated from the Chachamim, they found that there's a hint in the Torah upon which they lean their rabbinic enactment. So Minah and Amili, we're looking for an asmachta. And by the way, I heard a beautiful word, I think from the Meshech Chachma, that why do Chazal use Eruv Tavshilin as the example that Avram Avinu kept the whole Torah, even the rabbinic laws, like Eruv Tavshilin, because Avram Avinu's midah was achnas sarchim. And as we just spoke out, and we actually paskin like Rabbah, that you need to have the step of hoyel, that since you hoyel v'chazi, that since v'chazi leila archim was Eruv Tavshilin, is to enable you to make food on Friday just in case many guests will come. That's the way it's done. And that was Avram Avinu. So as Avram Avinu's midah of achnasas archim, that downgrades the problem of making food from Friday to Shabbos into only a rabbinic, because maybe you'll be eaten up on Friday. You didn't invite guests, you have an open house. If people are going to knock on your door and people know you have an open house, so they will knock on your door, it's going to be used today. That's why we use the midah of Avram Avinu to explain why we are allowed even to make an Eruv Tavshilin. Anyways, Minan Amili, Amar Shmuel, Amar Kra, his source, his asmachtas from a pasuk in Yisrael. Go figure, from the 10 Commandments, from the Aseres HaDibros. Zocher is Yom Shabbos L'Kachrei. Now we know we learned to some psachim. The pshat is Zochreu Alayayin. That's we learned that. But here the asmachta is Zochreu. When God says to remember, you know what that implies? That you might forget. When would a Yid ever forget about Shabbos? Not possible. There's one case, when Friday is Yom Tov. Since you are involved in the mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov, you might forget about Shabbos. You might eat up all of your food. So God is telling you, in other words, the way you will remember on Friday that there's still a Shabbos, you know how? By beginning to prepare food out of Yom Tov for Shabbos, of that Shabbos food. So there's something in your house that's for Shabbos. It's going to remind you, Shabbos. We'll come back to this in a moment. And my tama, Rashi 10 lines from the top. Lama tikno eruv. Krav vaday lav be'eruv mishtoy. Again, the pshat is not about an eruv. V'lav eruv mishtama minei. It's not even mashma eruv. It's only an asmachta. And he quotes over here. In other words, why did the Chachamim, you hear an asmachta, beautiful, a nice drasha. You tell me what the issue is. Why did they find it important to make such a tikkun? Amarava, kedei sheyivroid mana yafa l'Shabbos umana yafa l'Yom Tov. Based on what Shmuel said, it's a hemshech. Since you are involved in Simchas Yom Tov, you might eat up all of your good food for Yom Tov. That's the nature. Right? Yeah, you bought mashke for today and for tomorrow, but during a fabrengen, bring it all out. So what happens is there's a kavod Shabbos that might be lacking. So to make sure that Shabbos is honored, dafke when you begin preparing food from before, it's going to constantly tell you, Chavra, that tafshil that you prepared is for Shabbos. So it's going to make sure that Shabbos is honored as well. Rav Ashi says, no, it's not for Kvod Shabbos, it's for Kvod Yom Tov. Rav Ashi Amar, Kedei sheyoimru. Once you tell a person that even though biblically you are allowed to prepare food Friday for Shabbos, but biblically, l'Rabba hoyel, l'Rab Chizda, he doesn't subscribe to Hachana d'Rabba, but it's rabbinically prohibited, and you need to find this tool to get out of this rabbinic prohibition. People are going to realize that rabbinically you may not cook from Yom Tov to Shabbos, because Yom Tov is that holy, that you can't use Yom Tov to prepare stuff for the weekdays. So it adds to the cover of Yom Tov. You can't stop and use Yom Tov to make food for Shabbos. Yom Tov is Echad Day. Elama, since you began already before, it's considered you only continuing from out of Yom Tov. So that's the machloikis between Rav and Rav Ashi. Rav holds it's lechavot Shabbos. These are the words Rav Ashi holds that Eruv Tavshilin adds in the Kavod of Yom Tov. Frek the Gemara from our Mishnah, Tanach says, Oisa Tavshilin of Yom Tov, the Semech Alov Shabbos, Bishloim Rav Ashi, that says what? It's Kavod Yom Tov. The Amar Kadesha Yoimru Ein Oifim Yom Tov L'Shabbos. That's why you dafka don't allow a person to make the Eruv on Yom Tov. You have to make it Erev Yom Tov because you want to give kavod to Yom Tov. Hainu the Erev Yom Tov in the Yom Tov loy. But that the primary purpose of Erev Tavshilin is to add kavod and Shabbos. So if there would be a rabbinic enactment, you have to make an Eruv on Yom Tov. I mean, it's going to remind you to leave food for Shabbos. Ma'irim Erev Yom Tov. Why would you not be allowed to make an Eruv Tavshilin on Yom Tov itself? No, there should be a takana chevra on Erev Shabbos, which is Yom Tov. You have to make food for Shabbos. That's going to give cover to Shabbos. So the Gemara says, theoretically you're right. A person might be negligent, not negligent in a sinful way, but Yom Tov is Yom Tov. People are preoccupied with Simchas Yom Tov. So if you're going to leave it for Yom Tov, you might not do it. Do it before. Okay. It says the Gemara, now that we quoted the Shmuel that has an asmachta from the Aseres HaDibros, the Tana, there is a Beitzah, there's a Tana that brings an asmachta from Beshalach regarding the Parsha of the month. And it says that's about that no man is falling on Shabbos, because for Shabbos, you can only eat that which you made prior to. And the pasuk says, Eis asher toifu efu, that which you already baked is good. Eis asher tevashlu bashelu, that which you already cooked is good. Now, really, like Rashi tells us, if the only purpose of this pasuk would have been to tell you that you may not cook, you may not bake on Shabbos, the Plato should have said, Hayoim efu, Hayoim meaning today, Friday. Hayoim bashelu. This double lashon, Eis asher toifu efu. It's like a repetitive expression. Mikan Omar Rabbi Elazar or Rabbi Eliezer. And by the way, this is already a source for our minig of using baked and cooked. Both Ein Oifen Ella Al, that it's a Friday, but we're speaking about Friday that's Yom Tov. That if Friday is Yom Tov, you can't just bake for Shabbos. You can only bake if you began already baking out of Yom Tov. On Friday, that's Yom Tov. How beautiful is that? And Mikan Somcha Chachamim le'eruve tavshilin min ha'Torah. Here you have your asmachto. All right, Chavri, here we go. We're going to move away a little bit from Eruv Tavshilin, and we're going to learn about the importance of Simchas Yom Tov and the way we fulfill Simchas Yom Tov. Dafka by eating, or is there an option, like by Yos Shalosh Shudas every Shabbos, of fulfilling a meal beruchnias? Tana Rabbanan should say that, even though Hayom Yom says we're mechoyev today to do something begashmias, but the only reason why we're not nedagdeg dafka to wash is because there is a concept, as we'll see over here, of the fulfillment of simcha, love on a higher level through learning Torah. He was giving a drasha. If you think your rabbi speaks too long, not comparing, but Rabbi Eliezer on Yom Tov was darshaning and darshaning and darshaning, and that was it. It was like no one is going home to eat, and everything had a limit. The first group left; they went home to eat. So when they left, Amar Rabbi Eliezer says, "Halolu bali petasim." These chevra, they own barrels. What he meant to say is not what they understood. What he meant to say is, these are people that they are indulging in gashmias. You know why they left early? Don't think it was that early. Relatively early. He says they left early because they have big barrels of food. They need more time to indulge. When the second group finally left, Amar, Rabbi Eliezer says, Halolu bali chaviyos. They are owners of kegs. Rashi says they have the same taiva. They're into eating. They didn't leave earlier because they didn't have the barrels. So, there was no point for them to leave earlier. But they're into eating. They chose food over Torah. When the third group left later, so again, the same concept. He didn't say, wow, they had more eskafia. He said they're the same Baal Taivanikas. They left later because all they have are jugs. So they had less food. So there was no point going home earlier. And likewise, Katanavias, halolu bala they only had flasks. When the fifth group left, Omar halolu bali koshas, they only had cups. But he was criticizing them for exchanging Torah for eating. His chilu kachish says when the sixth group was getting ready to leave, Omar. Now Rashi says when the sixth group was about to leave, by that point the Beis Medrash was almost empty. The Beis Medrash looked already desolate. So he said, "Ooh, halalu ba'ala me'eda. Ooh, these are desolate people. They're bringing as a desolation, as an emptiness into the Beis Medrash." Now, the seventh group, Kol Hashvin Chavivin, after hearing all of these words of criticism, they were not budging. They're staying until the end. Problem was that Nasan ain't of the Talmud. Rabbi Eliezer now began to look, not on the sixth group, that when they began to leave, he called them Bali Me'eda. He began to look at the remaining students, so they got nervous. His chilu penei mishtanim, they became red, they became white. Like Rashi says, why were they afraid? They were staying there. Look inside the first Rashi under the Gemara. That Kesfurim, they all of a sudden realized that shekoyas al kachishis mipnei she'echru lotzis v'kol shchein oleinu. They see the sixth group. Don't forget, it was already very late when they saw that Rabbi Eliezer didn't have any understanding on the sixth group. Actually, he said even a worse expression, not that they have a lot of food, that they are Bala Me'eda. They all of a sudden felt that maybe Rabbi Eliezer was coming from the opposite place. Maybe Rabbi Eliezer was wanting for people to leave his lecture to go eat. And when he saw that they're leaving that late, they were making the wrong choice because they should have left earlier. He was upset at them for them staying to learn. That's what they thought. And if that's the case, they are in the biggest trouble. They didn't even move to leave yet. And if you have to go eat over learning, so they got very nervous. So Amar Lahem, so Rabbi Eliezer clarified, no, don't be upset. I'm happy that you're staying here. Banai, kinderlach, loylochem ani oimer. Elo lahalalu sheyatsu. I only criticize those who left. They went Simchas Yom Tov. Still, he said, Shemanichim chaye oilam. They abandoned eternal life, learning Torah. To do what? To eat. Temporary needs. Foolish. Shas betiras and he dashened. At some point, that lecture came to the end. So after he finished, now he tells them, go and eat fatty foods, rich foods, go drink sweet beverages. And this is a pasuk that we have in the Chemya, and we'll come back to that in a moment. No, it's even according to Rabbi Eliezer that Yom Tov, Simchas Yom Tov, could be celebrated only by learning Torah, but for that you have to learn Torah the whole day. The moment you stop learning, he also holds now you have to eat. And the whole pasuk reads, "The shulchu manis le'ein nachin loy." Send portions to those who are unprepared, and we're going to interpret this verse to mean that you're eight of tafshilin. We'll get to that. We'll get to every clause in a moment. Ki kadash hayim la'adinenu, because today Yom Tov is holy to our master. The alta yatzvu, and don't be dejected, don't be sad, don't be depressed. Why? Ki chedvas Hashem himo uschem, because the joy of Hashem is your security. Again, we'll see soon in the Gemara what this pasuk means. So let's go step by step. Omar Mar, the master taught. The Beitzah said, quoting Rabbi Eliezer, that he was upset at all of the people that left. Imagine, even though they stayed for a long time, but they were leaving. Means he called this Sudas Yom Tov Chaye Shah. Why is it Chaye Shah? Fracking Gemara. Simchas Yom Tov Mitzvah. Answers the Gemara. Opa, that's the Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer, the time of the Omar, Simchas Yom Tov is only the Shus. Only the Shus, very clear. The Shus means that you can choose to fulfill Simcha through Torah and through Tefilla. But if there's one moment that you're not learning Torah or davening and you didn't yet eat, you also have to eat. That's why at the end, he told them to go eat. The Tanya Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Ein lo adam b'yantav elo oy oichel v'shoysev, oy yoyshev v'shoynez. It's in Latin. However, Rabbi Yeshua Omer, nisht chalkeu. You must divide the day, not 50%. Balance. Some of it taka to sit and learn, including in that is davening, and some of it has to be for eating gashmis dika foods. But that's a mitzvah, and the mitzvah is not called chaye shah. In other words, chetz yoy lashem, part of Yom Tov should be dedicated to God, and the chetz yoy lachem, and part should be dedicated to you, meaning to the body to the lower part of the person. And Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Vishneim, both Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Mikra Echad Darshu, they expounded the same verse. They found the following contradiction. In one pasuk, this is on Parshas V'yei. Listen to the words. Atzeres Lashem Eloikecha. Now they were speaking about Yom Tov. It should be to Hashem. Another pasuk it says on Parshas Pinchas Atzeres Tialochem. It should be for you. So Haketzad. So Rabbi Eliezer said, Oy Kulul Hashem, Oy Kulul Lachem. You have a choice. Since you have a choice, he was critical of those who chose Gashmias over Ruchnias. Rabbi Yeshua Savar Chalkeyu. You have to divide it. You have to divide it. Chetzi Lashem and Chetzi Lachem. In other words, when a Yid is connected to godliness, then they have an obligation. To go out to get involved in a kosher way with mitzvahs, with Gashmias, which is almost all mitzvahs are Gashmias, and this even elevates the world. If you're only sitting and learning Torah, you're elevating you. What happened to the world? So there has to be a Chetzi Lachem. Okay, now that we quoted the entire pasuk that Rabbi Eliezer told these great Talmidim, what's the meaning of the pasuk that gifts or food portions should be sent to those who are unprepared? Amar Rab Chizda weiter eruv tafshilin mi shelo yiniach eruv tafshilin. If someone did not make an eruv tafshilin, so they cannot prepare food for Yom Tov for Shabbos, go send them portions. Ikad Amri. He only told them to help out those who are unable to make an eruv tafshilin. If someone was able to make an eruv tafshilin, and it's not that he forgot, but he didn't leave it on purpose, since we view him as a poisheya, he's negligent. So this second version holds, then don't help him out. So you see now, B'chal, this attitude, how to help out a Jew who's not yet observant, that we proudly Hasidim, Baal Shem Tov, we understand that Dafke, who are we to judge another Yid and go help him out? And other people that say, oh, he's a sinner, don't help him out. This debate didn't begin 300 years ago. This is going all the way back. All right, and Chevre, and obviously we don't side with the Iker da Amri Nikas. We side with the Iker. Okay. What's the meaning of this part of the pasuk? That the joy of Hashem is your security. And in the name of Rabbi Eliezer ben Shimon, that what? The joy of Hashem is your security. The joy of Hashem means that if I am doing something to give God joy, even if it's costing me money that I don't have, and by the letter of the law, I don't have to borrow money to do it. But if I want to give God joy, so I will be secured. That God tells the Yidden, Banai, my children, levu ilai, borrow for me. Borrowing from me is referring even to the Gashmizdika expenditures to fulfill the mitzvah. And v'kachu kedushas hayoim, and thus that's kedusha. Kedusha means to elevate the Gashmi. And v'ha'aminu bi, believe in me, have emunah. V'ani poireya, I will repay your loan. So now that we quoted the Rabbi Yechim Shimon, so the pshat now will be the way Rashi learns. We're going to have another statement of the same author, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, in the name of Rabbi Shimon, and we're going to speak out a marsha that's going to actually link the content. But let's first learn Gemara Rashi. So now the pshat, the next statement, it's coming from the same author that if a person has fields, nechasav here you'll see means real estate, and it means fields, and you want to make sure that no one takes over your land, no one invades and steals products from your land. The solution is yitar bohem eder, plant in your field a eder tree. It's Rashi says it's a tree that has very long branches, and I'll speak up by heart Rashi. Either it means plant around the boundary these eder trees, make a proper boundary like this, so it's going to be difficult for people to come in their ganovim. Or Rashi says eder is a type of herb that has an odor that repels insects. In other words, if you have growing fields and you want to make sure that chayas, that these little creatures, bugs don't come ahead and consume everything that you planted, so plant something that has a bad odor. I want to tell you right now that the Marshat says that eder refers to tzedakah. That just like we said, that if you spend money on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, God will say, he'll make sure that you'll be able to pay it back, even though it appears like you're going out of pocket. So if you want to make sure that b'chlal you're nechasim, go on, you secured your nechasim dafka by giving tzedakah. Even though it looks like you're going less is more. Shenamar, as it says, Eder, now we're going to go with a play of words. Eder again, Larashi, it's a certain type of tree. Adir b'moreim Hashem. So here we have that strength comes from this Eder tree. Inami, Idra, the word Idra means it's going to live for many generations. Perpetuity. Kishmei, Rav Meir, Doirish Bishma. Oh, you that's late. My Idra, the word Idra means the Kaimale, Ledari Dare, and indeed, Tanya Nami Hachi, Sadash Yeshba Eder. If there's an Eder in a field by the boundaries, or this herb that repels insects, or Lamashaf, a Yid is giving tzedakah, Einon Nigzelas. What you have will never be stolen from you. Not only that, the Einon Nechmeses. Nechmeses is sometimes people, they pay you for your possessions, but you don't want to sell it. They force you to sell it. It's not as bad as Gezela, but you don't want to be forced. And not only that, it'll pay to sell Mishtamrin. God willing, Chevra, a lot more to be continued.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Good Shabbos. Thank you. Next time somebody asks me to be an Arev, I'll just tell them give them this Gemara shtickle. The Eibishter will pay.
Thank you, Rabbi.
So be an Arev, and then when they come collect, tell the lender that.
Rabbi, today with the Rav making the Erev Tavshilim for the whole city.
Tomorrow.
So we're never in a situation where someone forgot and then you can't share food because
not so simple.
Nobody forgot. No.
We'll see. This is the next big sugya. Back on this pasuk, Danny. On this pasuk, you have to be in the city. If you're outside the tchum, it doesn't work. Or even if you are in the city, you have to do it. You can only rely on the Rav. That was if you forgot, but not to be poisheya, because where's your covered Shabbos and covered Yom Tov? The whole thing is to give covered. If I rely on the Rav's aid of